Hello, welcome to my podcast. My name is Yalda Habibzada, and I will be giving you an analysis on my parenting interview based off of two generations. It's gonna be the silent generation and the millennial generation. I thought this interview was pretty interesting. The two people that I interviewed, they are in the same family tree, I believe. So it was interesting seeing how their answers were similar versus what differences they had. So my three concepts today were parenting styles, childcare, and emotional development and the role of parenting. Based off of my research, the main parenting styles that I found were authoritarian, authoritative, neglectful, and indulgent. Authoritarian are parents who are unresponsive to their child. They're strict, rejecting, and demanding. Authoritative parents are extremely supportive. They're responsive. They guide their children, but they can still be demanding and controlling at the same time. Neglectful parents, they're usually absent physically or emotionally. They could be ignorant to their child's needs. They don't really enforce rules, making them undemanding or uncontrolling. Similarly, you have the indulgent parent. They're more liberal. They don't really have restrictions, or they're more lenient. So they also fall under undemanding or uncontrolling. And these ones aren't really good parenting styles. Just because children need support and they need a role model, and those last two don't really provide that. Many parents do combine these two styles. It's better for the child if their parents have a similar parenting style, but often that's not the case. My second concept, which was childcare, I found that allowing your children to play with other children, especially in like a school setting, is very good for their physical, cognitive, social, and emotional development. Another thing I found is that in childcare, nutrition is a big thing. Even during prenatal development, if your child doesn't get enough nutrition, then they will not grow up to their full potential. And many parents don't know their child is underweight or overweight, most of the time overweight, with growing obesity rates. And parents should try limiting sweets and snacks to help expand their child's palate to more nutritious foods. But also, at most times, low-income families are at risk for malnutrition, and that is because they don't really have the same access to food as some people might have. And also, the activity levels that they have in childcare centers and preschool programs might be different. And for the emotional and development role of parenting, quality parenting takes time and effort. So you could develop rules and be affectionate. And children have biological, cognitive, and environmental influences. Some of their primary emotions are surprise, anger, joy, sadness, fear, and disgust. And then their self-conscious emotions, which develop later on, could be embarrassment, jealousy, empathy, pride, shame, and guilt. And these emotions and how parents handle them can affect how the child grows up to have close and secure relationships with other adults and their peers. So it's important for parents to be supportive of their child's emotions. So on to my interview questions. Some of the background questions that I asked both parents was your experience having a child positive or negative? And what is your perspective on how parenting should be done? So the silent generation basically told me that their experience was excellent and that parenting should be done out of love for your kids because you want your kids to grow up to have good morals and to become good people. And then the millennial generation answered that having a kid was the best thing to happen to them, and that we should treat our children how we would have wanted to be treated if we were a child at that age, which I thought was pretty similar. They both had different goals in mind, but they were both pretty positive experiences. And then my first core question was, how would you describe your style of parenting? When I asked this question, I didn't want to ask directly, were you authoritative? Were you neglectful? I wanted them to answer the way that they thought that they were parenting. And I think they did a pretty good job of answering. For the silent generation, they answered that you should basically love your children to be as good as possible and teach them what to do and what is right. They have to know if what they do or don't do is right. They have to be disciplined, and that discipline will help them understand what they're doing wrong. And then they could take a look at things and make a wiser decision on what they should have done. So I feel like this parenting style leans more towards authoritarian, maybe a little more authoritative, just because they have the right thing in mind. But again, they are really enforcing discipline, what is right or wrong, and what they want their child to see as good or bad. The second parent answered that they should talk to your child with open lines of communication. Don't just discipline, but teach them and be truthful about things. Don't explain it from one direction, but all sides. And that you shouldn't take pride or pleasure in discipline, and make sure there is a reward when a reward is meant to be given, and make sure the child is going in the correct way. So this one's a little more authoritative, which I thought was interesting. So yeah, the millennial was a little more of the supportive side compared to the silent generation. And then my second core question was, how did your life change drastically after having a baby? If not, then that's fine. If so, how? So the silent generation said that their life did not drastically change, but having a child did require more of their time, because you have to be there to help your child be all that they can be, and you have to be more attentive and nurturing. The millennial answered that their lifestyle stayed the same. They went to work before and after having a kid, although they do make time for their family still. They still work most of the time, so it stayed around the same for them. And then my last question was, what myths or superstitions did you hear about baby care or pregnancy? The silent generation answered that they did not hear many myths about pregnancy, but they were advised not to exercise or to lift anything heavy while pregnant, which I know is a pretty common one. And then the millennial answered that they did not know any, and that his wife looked after the baby's health by not drinking wine, and he tried not to smoke around the pregnant wife because of the complications that come with drugs and alcohol use around the development of the baby in the prenatal stage. Overall, I thought that both parents were definitely more on the controlling / demanding side of parenting. But they did seem more of the authoritative style to me. I'm not sure if this is the same for every family, just because I know that they're from the same family. But I thought it was pretty interesting how their answers were still pretty similar, despite having around a decade's worth of age gaps between them. And yeah, thank you for listening to my podcast. That's it for me. Thank you.